All right, so I'm sitting here with some of Jim Button's close friends. So Fraser, Jeff, Sarah, how are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Doing good.
Good. So yeah, thanks for joining me. Appreciate that. So I'm curious, and I'll ask each of you individually. I'll start with you, Sarah. When did you meet Jim? What was the circumstances around that?
I met Jim way back in my early 20s. One of the first events that we worked on was Calgary Cares, and he brought me on board to work on PR. So we just really did a lot of unique, fun projects together from there. And yeah, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was, because then you can do the math and figure other things out.
So years ago, or I shouldn't say years ago, a couple years ago, he did a podcast takeover of mine, and he interviewed a few people. So you were one of them, and he was doing the math on that, and you gave him shit for. You said, you're basically asking me how old I am. You're not supposed to ask a lady how old she is. So I'm not going to make the same mistake.
Let's just say it's more than 25 years.
Yeah. So for yourself, Jeff, where did you meet Jim?
Well, funny, it was probably close to the same time. Michael Green from One Yellow Rabbit introduced us. I used to be in entertainment, and so Jim brought me on as a guest director for the Big Rock Eddies one year.
Okay.
And so I was brand new into showbiz and nervous, and he gave me some nice compliments, and it actually was kind of a confidence inspiring for me to then push on into entertainment. I worked with Sarah for probably a decade, and in concert production. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, many years ago.
What about you, Fraser?
I think Dave Kelly used to say people would say that they met Jim at a thing. So I met him at a thing.
At a thing?
I'm pretty sure it was the Big Rock Eddies. And then also he was working with Dave Howard with the event group. So they were producing a host of different events, and I was at the Hyatt at the time. So we'd rub shoulders, and I'd keep pitching him, listen, I got a great Big Rock Eddies commercial in mind.
Yeah.
And he'd try to encourage me to do it. And just over the years, we'd continue to run into each other later with Big Rock. And when I made the jump to Hotel Arts, we were sponsoring all the same events. So, we'd always run into one another at the same things.
Nice. So I was trying to think about, he had so many different skills. And I had this thought about, I remember years ago, I was watching a show about Chris Farley, and someone said, you'd spend the day with Chris Farley, and then you'd talk to someone who would say, oh yeah, I spent yesterday with Chris Farley. I was like, no, you didn't. I did. And someone else said, no, you didn't. So one of Chris's skills was whenever he was with people, he made them feel really special, and he made them feel like he had the day with them. And it made me think of Jim. When you were with him, you got all of him, and he was really present. And I see that as one of his skills. When you guys think about Jim, what skills come to mind specifically that you really admired?
I think you just hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways, is that he really made room for the people and things that mattered to him, and he was never distracted in that moment. And I also love that he wasn't a people pleaser. He just, if there was something he wanted to do, he didn't need his ideas justified by a committee of 20. He would just go and do them. And I think we in this industry could learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
Listening for sure on those walks. Like he was someone who it actually mattered what you were saying. And so when you say he's present, that you nailed it. But he'd listen, he'd remember, he'd follow up on things, because it was true connection. He was authentic with you the same way he'd be with the mayor or a celebrity or anybody else. And I always really appreciated that about him.
Yeah, picking up on that too. He was just so present in this. I always found he was really strong at summarizing things as well, sort of unpacking something in those walk and talks, or when you're at a meeting, or if it was a meeting you're trying to foster some collaboration. Jim was just really good at unpacking sort of where the pain points were in a particular issue, and summarizing that. And then he had a skill of finding a way to get people to rally together and work together.
Yeah.
And one takeaway that I always had, because he was present with you at the time, and I'm sure many other people felt it, was you just felt good being around Jim. Kind of brought the best out of me whenever I was around him. And I'm sure that people felt that same way when they were having that honest, full connection with them when they got together.
Yeah. So I'm probably simplifying things, but one of the things when Jim left Village, obviously there was a void there, and when Village went out to hire people to replace that, Jeff and Fraser, you were both hired, and I felt like, from an outsider looking in, that it was almost like they hired two sides of his personality. So there was and Jeff obviously had more than just a business acumen, but very strong business background, and then Fraser very community focused, and have been in the hospitality industry for a long time. So Jeff, for you coming in, how much pressure was that for you to kind of be asked to kind of help fill that void of Jim?
Well, there's lots of pressure, and it starts with the announcement goes out, and all of a sudden, you're getting texts, and there's so many gracious people. So you realize this, I always knew Village was special, but then it was like, oh my goodness. And Fraser and I have talked about this a lot. It's it's an honor. It's an honor to be associated with Village. And then the Jim factor on top of it is, and you can hop on this, but there is no other Jim. So from the word go, it was, and Jim was also very gracious with how he welcomed us into Village, which was, you be you. You just lend your talents to this. You were chosen for a reason. You be you. I'm happy to assist where I can. I've lent my talents for the last 5 years, and the launch. And now it's time for you to take over, and we walked in that arm in arm.
He also, on many walks, we walked a lot during that transition time, and he always would kind of laugh at the amount of pressure that you guys were feeling. So he's like, it's kind of funny. They're just so nervous. He's like, but I trust them, and that's why he
That's awesome.
chose them. And that was what he had said to me. He's like, well, how could it go wrong when you've got people that you trust in a role? If something's not working, they're going to tell you.
Yeah.
So he felt really relieved.
The truth is, he could afford both of us instead of one Sarah. So that's the
he
decision.
got free advice from me on the walk.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things, and you see it there. There's something unique about building a company, but then to grow a company, it's maybe a different skill set. So I feel like, how have you been able to take, what Jim and his team built, but obviously you need to put your own stamp on it. Have you been able to do that at Village? Because what he was able to do in the time that he was there isn't necessarily the same recipe for success moving forward, right? So is that how you've been able to kind of put your own stamp on things there?
Well, I think when you say that, what I hear is, I think I agree with, which is doing a startup and starting something from new, which has so many skills around vision and and taking it from nothing to something, and then are you viable? And there's all these different little steps that you take, is very different from scaling. And the truth is that I'm a different entrepreneur than Jim and the rest of our founders were. So I can speak to what I think I'm better at is not necessarily the startup, but the next stage, that scaling piece of it. But even when you're in that stage, I think you have to be in constant awareness of sort of reinventing yourself or evolving and taking the business to places it needs to go. It never is a hold the wheel and fly the plane. It is always navigating up and down, pitching, and so I think that it's a different equation than what they had to do, and I think that the team we have brings the skill sets to do this, and it's a really different market. 175 breweries in Alberta instead of brewery number 6, and let's face it, a lot of Jim's DNA became Village's DNA. So when you're forming culture and when you want to build a brand that means something to people, it was that transference that happened there. And so I think there's new challenges for business or for Village down the road, and all we can do is the best to rise up to them.
Yeah, and it's crazy when you say that, because I remember when Village first started, and I was at a Italian sportsman's dinner with Tom, and someone came up to Tom and said, you guys are crazy. There's already too many breweries in this industry.
Already.
How can Village survive, And then you look at the landscape now and you think, oh my God, like imagine if, just the changes in that 10 years has been ridiculous. So Fraser, we were lucky enough, I think this was pre-COVID, when we Jim invited us over to have supper with him, Jim and Tracy, and so we were at his place. So you met my wife met you that night, and I just remember when you got hired at Village, and I told Amy that, and she was like, oh good, like there was something about you and that connection with how she related to you and Jim that she was like, that's the right person to kind of be with Village. So how special was it for you to have that time at Village?
Oh, it was a gift. And to get to work with Jeff and such a talented group of people at Village was really delicious, actually.
Yeah.
And it was nice to pick up the torch that Jim was tossing to Jeff and I, and to try to expand on his vision and update it and bring more people into an ever-expanding circle, to grow their business acumen, take them to the next level. Jeff's got so many different talents that he's brought to the table, but it's that business process and just really strategically analyzing the business and trying to figure out where to take that funnel, and then me bringing sort of a different community ethos and culture and that sense of connection. Well, it was a great 1-2 punch, and it's continued on with the team that's there at Village. I mean, they're so involved, and it's just really interesting to see how Village is charting post-COVID and doing really, really well. So it was really, really fun. Great responsibility to quickly try to grasp what the brewery industry was all about, and the connectivity that Jim had fostered, not just in Alberta, but across the country. And Village tried to take on some of the things that his pet projects, one of which was the Calgary beer, and take it to that next level.
Yeah.
It was just really fun. And then I just had so much fun thinking that, okay, he's passed the torch. Now I get to have fun at Nut Raiser too, where we're going to serve Bull's Balls beer to people. And
there, you got that word in there now for you.
It was
you
something
wanted to sneak
else.
that word in. You got it.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Subtle.
it's a full taste.
Yeah, it's something else. I think it took me. I think last year was maybe the first year. It was a couple years ago anyway. I would always go to that fundraiser and get the beer, but I'd always just grab it and put it down.
And
I actually did try it like a couple years. Okay, well, I gotta see what the heck this is all about. But
it was the most rewarding pint. It's $100, and you're making a donation to the Prostate Cancer Center, making an impact here in Alberta.
Yeah.
And you get a delicious exotic. Clearly a prairie. Yeah. Clearly a prairie.
I just said
beer.
hell no, and I gave the $100 without taking the beer.
Give away my pint.
And then you could help out
Feeling
the
really
host bar
generous.
by buying a chaser, which might be something that's a little bit more, down a narrow path that would be more conventional.
Yeah.
So, no, it's just great. I love some of the fun things that he was really, really connected into community, and he had a sense of fun, and he brought fun into work, and you could just see how people would react when he was around them.
But you did that with Jim for many years before you were at Village, didn't you?
Yeah.
Village Ginger and
Wiener dog.
the wiener, the wiener piping in the wiener dogs at Circle. Like you were,
and that's a good point, and that's something I wanted to touch on, because it wasn't that Jim was sitting there, teaching you about business or teaching you about marketing, teaching you about community. That's where you guys connected. And so he was learning just as much from you guys as you were learning from him. It was very much a two-way street. So in that sense, like you've always been community. And so, as much as you probably learned from Jim was learning from you right beside you, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of fun when you're on the ice with an all-star.
Yeah.
You know, you can put the puck in the net a lot faster.
Yeah.
He was the
that's fair.
king of voluntelling people
Yeah.
that what they're going to
Voluntelling,
do. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, really? I'm on this board now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult to say no to him.
You
It was-
couldn't.
your
You wouldn't,
knee-jerk
'cause you knew
reaction
you'd-
is
you
yes.
You'd have FOMO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you knew it'd be fun because you would regret it. You'd
And
have
he-
FOMO if you didn't say
Plus,
yes.
he would also say yes if you asked him. So it's like, hey, like you have to, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes he was very ambiguous. Like Fraser,
Sometimes.
Sarah, I think you guys should meet and
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Okay, about what? I think you guys will figure it out.
Yeah, that was the beauty of Hump Day.
Yeah.
Is how he could just get all
Yeah.
these people together
Forgot
on a
about
Wednesday at Village and just, okay, I'm kind of busy. I got a lot of people that I'm going to chat with. This is me pretending to be Jim. But yeah, Jeff, you and Sarah, you guys should talk. But what? I have no idea. But you guys
don't
go
know.
figure it out.
That sounds like a Sarah problem. You got to
Yeah.
figure it out. So what did, I don't want to put you on the spot, but in terms of community, is there something that stands out that maybe that you learned from him watching him?
Well, I had a lot of conversations with him about collaboration.
Yeah.
How you can knit together a framework where you could get people to work together towards a common goal. And he just said, you got to bring passion into the game, but you can't have the ego in there. And you can quietly pull people into that circle, but you can't really push an agenda on them too aggressively. And so I've tried to embrace that ethos and try to bring that spark. You know, there was a little bit of magic that you'd get into a meeting and you'd see Jim kind of starting to vibrate with excitement about something, and it was tough to say no. So I tried to pick up on some of those pieces and see where we could take it. But gosh, I had a lot of fun work with him. One of my favorite marketing and branding experiences working with Jim was back in the day when he was with Evans Hunt and working with Tourism Calgary. We launched the Visit Calgary website, which was all about connecting community, helping visitors to understand what there is to see and do in the city, and also for locals to get excited about what there was to do too. But working with all the creatives at Evans Hunt and working with Jim on this and the other stakeholders that were part of it, and knitting together the Hotel Association and Tourism Calgary and all the attractions, highlighted my career. On the marketing side, working with them. And then the activations were kind of fun. I brought this interesting little welcome mat into the studio as well.
Yeah.
It says Visit Calgary, and if you pick it up, it feels like it's about 3 pounds. So we sponsored a chuck wagon, and we had Mark Sutherland that was driving the chuck for us. It was the Visit Calgary chuck wagon. It was awesome. We said, hey, Mark, you know, when you're finishing the race, like all the chuck wagon drivers do, this is Jim's idea, you know how you throw those T-shirts out at people? That'd be great if you could do that with the welcome mat. So I'm rolling this thing up right now, and you can see in the studio, it's kind of large.
Baseball bat?
Mark Sutherland's wife was, don't do it. And Jim and I are like, do it. It'll be awesome. It was really great. So we rolled it up and we put a little bow on it, and he chucked one out into the crowd, and it hit the first guy in the back of the head, knocked his Caesar, splashed all over these other people, and I'm running in, no, Mark, don't do it anymore. And Jim's Johnny on the spot right away, making sure that he bought a round of Caesars for the other people. But that was a little awkward. You know, he's really smart, but sometimes we didn't have the greatest ideas, but we
The
sure had fun.
execution wasn't perfect. At least it wasn't like a T-shirt gun or something that you guys were shooting those things
Can you
out of.
imagine a 4-pound mat hitting you in the
Yeah.
back of the head with some torque? Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
it wouldn't be
cowboy
good
that
with a
it
gun.
hits and how to, you know, not have him pissed off at you.
Well,
That's awesome.
he was so charming. He talked them off the ledge. It was all good.
Yeah. So Sarah, for you, so you've, like I said, you've known Jim for a long time. Was it marketing that you kind of drew you guys together? Was that your common bond?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both like to push the needle a little bit on things, and that kind of, you know, the word fun comes out a lot, but it was also fun with purpose. And I really appreciated that about Jim, was that he would have these quirky ideas that were really ridiculous, but at the end of the day, it would attract what it needed to something that was really important. So there was always purpose to some of the craziness. So, you know, he's always been a marketing, you know, probably the person in the industry that I look up to most and always will, in terms of what he's done. And then, you know, turned into a bit of a life mentor for me through a bit of a fun cancer journey. So our relationship kind of morphed from the marketing side to more the life mentor side.
Which I
So
think
I've had him as two mentors.
Totally. Well, so a couple years ago when he did the podcast takeover, so you were one of the people that he talked to, and you guys talked a lot about the cancer. Was it nice to have someone like that? Obviously, it's a scary situation, and I mean, your story is like very inspirational. I mean, what you went through was incredible, and so I got to kind of be a fly on the wall for that conversation and listen. But how important was it in your journey to have someone like Jim to kind of be there for you?
I mean, I think part of me ending up the way that I am was because of that friendship, and I think it was a two-way street. So we were a bit of when you're faced with something like that, you put on this outward wall of strength because your family is watching, and you have to be strong for all the people who are kind of crumbling around you. So it was, for me, having that safe space with someone who really understood what I was going through. And, you know, every time one of us was in a hospital room, there were text messages flying and, oh, you should get this medication when you're here next time. It's pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome.
I enjoyed my life mentorship with him probably even more so because I got to really know the real Jim Button deep down. Yeah.
I'm curious if you guys have a story that kind of captures who Jim was to you. And I'll just start with one for me. So Jim was always someone who, if I was trying something, he was the guy that I could call and be like, hey, I'm trying this. And he'd be like, okay, cool. Like I'll do that with you. So my first ever podcast was with Jim. And so he called me the day, I think it was the day before. He said, oh, I'm meeting with the president of Beer Canada for breakfast tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, no worries. Like we can reschedule. And he's like, no. I'm bringing him with me. So I'm like, okay, sweet. No pressure. I've never done a podcast, but now I got the president of Beer Canada. And the guy was great. We had a great time. But when we're in there, so we weren't, doing audio, we weren't doing videos, just audio. But Jim said, the mic really picks everything up. So don't touch your desk or anything like that. So I spent my first podcast just like with my arms up like this. And I'm like, I can't do this, man. I got to actually be able to move. But, to me, it's just like every time I had something that I wanted to try, I could call him and he would, he was, yeah, sure, let's do it, and that's huge. People need that person in their lives, so for me, that's something that's who Jim was for me. Is there something similar that you guys have that you think like that was who Jim was for me?
I told a story at his celebration of life of him just completely honored but not caring about Queen's Platinum Jubilee medal, and literally it just it was something that happened. But how's your kids doing in Ringette, and how was the weekend? So there's all those qualities that he's just I guess someone really with their priorities in line. But when you were asking the question, the thing that came to mind was more the stuff that I don't know. So when I would go on walks with Jim, and I was lucky to have that time, often there were two more after me, or they, like sometimes he'd do three in a day. And he'd never tell me specifics. Sometimes he'd tell me about who he met, but you'd hear little things like, I know he walked with someone who's a young person who had tried to hurt themselves. I don't know specifics, but it's those stories. It's the stories of my spouse has just gotten cancer. I saw your blog. I don't know you. Could you walk with her? Mm-hmm. So that what it comes down to for me is it's just a generosity of heart and giving that was really at his core that nobody ever knows about. He didn't, just like the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, he wasn't waving it, look at me. It was truly living through purpose, living through his heart. And I think that at the end of the day, that was kind of one of the gifts he got from his cancer journey, was being able to help people even in a state when, he was going through his own journey. Yeah. So,
yeah. What about you?
Just an appreciation for living in the moment and appreciating it. lot of our walks, and I think you reflected on this too in the celebration of life. The conversations weren't about work so much; they were about family, friends, and I always found walking is great, by the way, because you're going down parallel lines and there's alignment, and somehow you come up with a joint resolution at the end, which is great. But I really enjoyed my walks with them because it taught me how to be a better dad, husband, friend to so many people, mentor or helper to others, and we would have just great conversations on that front. And then I would step back and take a look at just the joy and the smiling in his eyes that he would have when he was talking about Jack or Amanda or Tracy.
Yeah.
And that's what mattered, and that was really what was great. And the other thing is just he would live in the moment in other areas of joy too. And I have this indelible picture of him on a kayak with a blacksmith beer on the front, and he's laughing, and he's looking at 4 rafts full of knuckleheads going down the Bow River wearing tuxedos, which is formal activewear, actually.
Of course, yes.
And he's just laughing with great joy at the insanity of it.
Yeah.
And he's just living in the moment, and he's in his spot. He's in the mountains. He's on a river where he spent so much time doing outdoor pursuits, and he just had joy looking at his friends, having a good time. And he knew that he was one of those people that unlocked that possibility. So I find that that's one of the gifts that he's given to me. I'm one of those guys that's always thinking, what are we going to be doing 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road? What do I got to do next week? Just calm down.
Yeah.
Live in the moment. Be present. And I think that was one of the gifts that he imparted to me and to so many other people. Just find the joy in some of the little things, the simplest things in life, and appreciate them. It was great. I loved his smile and his laugh.
What I loved about that story is I was picturing you guys there and a group of knuckleheads passing you guys in the river, but you guys were the knuckleheads. He was making fun of you guys.
Yeah. We were clearly, yes.
Yeah.
We should have been made fun of. Yeah. It was good.
Awesome.
And he loved it. He just loved it.
What about you, Sarah?
I think just his genuine care of people. In my final, get together with him, every word out of his mouth was about taking care of other people. And just, you would walk into literally a hospice where someone knows that they're in their final days, and his first thing, he's like, so how's Sarah today? Mm-hmm. How are you? Tell me how you're doing. And he's like, but I got to tell you, if I'm at peace with this, you got to be. So, he had a way of taking complex things and simplifying them where it's just a no-brainer. So I'm like, of course I have to be at peace with this if you are.
Did you guys both mentioned walks? Did you get to do some gym walks?
We would walk once every couple of weeks. And we actually, just before COVID hit, launched a program called Walk It Out, which was, we always really hated those terrible community hall support groups where you all sit in a semicircle and talk about how horrible your life is. And in the cancer world, it can be a very depressing place. So we just decided we'd start walking instead and talking. So we just came up with this idea of Walk It Out, where it's more like a group of people meet up under the cone of privacy and simple, if you keep your stories to yourself, but it was a safe place for people to kind of walk it out. Yeah,
there's something about the walks. I would agree. It's a lot more enjoyable than sitting around and just there's just something enjoyable about it. We'd usually end with an ice cream or something unhealthy.
Chai latte.
All good. Yeah, chai latte.
Have you ever done the inclement weather walk?
Yeah.
He loved outdoor pursuits, and there were several times where I'm like, give you every excuse, Jim, it's gonna be slippery out there, and it's terrible, it's cold, and let's see you at 9. Okay.
That was his therapy, though. It was very much about mental health, and he said, if I stop every time my body tells me to stop, I'm not going to move again. So that was really his he didn't want an excuse for that, so he wouldn't ever give anyone else an excuse.
So one of the people, we were talking about it earlier today when I was meeting with the other group, but obviously in a celebration of life, Tracy came up a lot. You know, she is such an amazing person. Do you guys have a relationship? Like, what can you tell me about Tracy? Like, you know, having known Jim for so long, you know, I think what he went through and how successfully he was able to navigate it is a result of her being there. So, what are your thoughts on her?
I think that he would be the first to tell you she was the actual saint in the couple. Mm-hmm. She held the glue together, and Jim often spoke about kind of the unsung heroes of the healthcare system being caregivers, because he literally wouldn't have been able to do what he did without her. Yeah. And that was a great sacrifice for her, and one that she never once complained about. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more beautiful person than Tracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a partner, the true partnership. Mm-hmm. From everything that Jim's told me from talking with Tracy and some of the work that they've done, like they truly are a partnership where, you know, they're aligned on things, they work things out. Parenting, you know, Jim lived a very busy life as well. So how they both have been there for their kids, and, you know, now in university and out of university. So just really, I guess, two extremely strong, self-actualized people who found each other and created this amazing life.
Yeah, it's really cool. You mentioned that you walked with him like almost every Monday, is that right?
Yeah, so every Monday we had a standing walk, and, you know, if he was out of town or I was on holidays or something, we'd miss a few, but yeah, it was like a regular thing. And yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. My favorite way to start a week.
What surprised me, though, when you were sharing that story is that you really didn't talk business, and you really, like, I would have thought that was his way of like infiltrating Village and like, hey, here's what you got to do. You know what I mean? That's what I was picturing. But you were like, no, it was just, you know, talking about everything else, right?
Well, at the beginning, you know, I think he's on our board, but he's on disability, so he wasn't working. But but as a board member, you know, there was at the beginning was the comfort. How's it going? And you're there, and do you have any questions and things? And then it kind of grew into more that, you know, those walks were really when I became close with Jim. We were friends before that, but we really became close over that, because a lot of the things that we would talk about were about life, and we're about family, and we're about people, and we're about views on things. And, you know, some of it was topical and just what would happen during the day, and some of it would be things that we would be going through. And I cherish those times, and definitely I like them as well, because you know, I mentioned Jim's DNA is such a big part of Village's DNA. Mm-hmm. Well, I got a really good taste of that DNA over those walks. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Try to honor it.
So when you think about, you know, just having conversations about Jim, and, you know, with, like, are there questions that you guys have? Are there, like, what are there stories that we're missing? Is there something that you guys want to share about him? You have a whole notepad there, buddy. Come on.
I think it's just that menagerie of friends that he was able to create and collect over the years. Super jocks to the beer community, to what he was doing with the folks up at the Cummings School of Medicine with the pediatric psychosocial oncology and survivorship. So powerful. When you chat with the people that were involved in the fundraising on that, and the ones that are doing the research, what he and Tracy and Jack and Amanda have done with that is absolutely profound. And it's just, you realize just the breadth of connections that he had and how he would bring people together. There's such power in it. And when you have some quiet time and you chat with each of these individuals and their different groups, it really fills the cup.
Yeah.
I've had a chance to chat with some of those folks up at that are doing the research, and you just see the love that they have for Jim and Tracy. That's profound. He had that connection with the Prostate Cancer Institute, with the work that he was doing with the Nut Raiser. It's a silly, fun event, but the impact of it and how it creates community is so important. think of the arts and culture community that he had impact on as well. You know, Jeff and Jim go way back as well, but they were also doing work with Beakerhead. It's like, where was Village? They were at everything. And that Circle Festival, about taking a festival into different communities. Not that it's a static thing that's got to be over, is it Millennium Center, but Jim's vision was to take it out where the people are and to introduce them and let other Calgarians know just what a vitality we have in this city. So much fun. And then just to be open to the great idea of letting those little legged dogs run with frenzy after they've been whipped up into craziness because some nut bar brought bagpipes and led them on a parade around the perimeter of the festival.
Bagpiper.
For German dogs. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So it was totally fun, but it was just the insanity of it. But he was just he had connections with so many people, and I think that was one of the reasons I loved so much about going to Village.
Yeah.
For Hump Day was you just never knew who he was going to connect you with.
Yeah, totally.
And the joy that comes out of those connections, and it instilled in me just a passion for supporting local. He did a ton of work with Stephanie Jackman back in the day with her group REAP, Respect for the Environment and All People, which is all about talking about being economic pollinators and how your purchasing decisions can have profound impact in terms of circulating dollars locally. Jim was an advocate of that, and it was great to see where that would go. And then how he would raise up his elbows and work with the Stampede to get them to start thinking of a craft beer option.
He loved fighting the red tape.
It was amazing. And it's so great that you can go into the Dome now and you got some craft beer that you can have. And at the Stampede, it's great that you could do that. Like, who would broker a deal and be such an advocate for it, such that you got this major sponsor like Budweiser, and yet, hey, the other kids can come to the table too.
Yeah.
And Jim was good at bringing other people to the table.
That's a good point.
We called him the linchpin, was the word that we used to use for him all the time, because he was like that connector. Not always the one that did all the work for everything, but he would be like, I think you guys should do this. And then he would step back.
And I'm curious, during when you had Julie on, did you talk about some of the work that was happening behind the scenes? Jim and Julie and another gal, Javal Stewart, and there might have been somebody else involved. We're having discussions about how we could get food delivered out to individuals that needed it, and how we could access some commercial kitchens.
So
did that
we
one come
weren't
up?
chatting about that, but actually he did it on the same podcast takeover. He had a conversation with Julie, and they discussed that too. Yeah.
It's just amazing where
Yeah.
his insights would come, and then the next day you'd be presented with this digital landscape of here's how we could connect all these different dots. And it was just amazing to see how that mind would work.
And so many people hide their Rolodex from others. They're like, no. If you know that person, then I don't know. Like, it's just like his Rolodex was sitting there, and it's like, hey man, whoever. And not only was it sitting there, it'd be like, he would forcefully bring people together and be like, no, you need to meet this person. You know what I mean? I think that's like that amount of insight. So many people, they have the opposite mentality, and that was something that made him special. What else? Like, is there something that we're missing that just comes to mind at all? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think for me, maybe the one thing a lot of people don't know, because they see this big community builder and all these big ideas, is that he was a real human being too, that, through his journey had his ups and downs. He just learned how to navigate them, but he was never afraid to be vulnerable about those things. And I think he actually relished the small achievements in his life maybe more than the big ones. So I think the lesson we can all take from that is that you don't have to be Jim Button. That would be impossible to do all these big things. But if you all just do like one small thing in a way that Jim would, like it will matter to the world. And I think that's where he really got his true joy, was from seeing other people find their little thing that's going to light them up. But I think it is important to know that, I used to say, it's not all unicorns and cotton candy, Jim. Sometimes life just sucks. And he's like, yep, you're right, it does. And then you got to feel it. That's real. And then you've got to bounce back and just not stay stuck in that place. So I think that's important for people to know, because sometimes life isn't always fun.
When I think one of the things with him is if you had never met him, you'd think, oh, this is the nicest guy in the world. And I'm not saying that he wasn't the nicest guy in the world, but he was honest. And so if you weren't giving your best, he wasn't just gonna be like, oh, that was a super job. Like he would challenge you, and so he was honest, and he was nice in the way that he approached his honesty. Like he wouldn't, completely break you down, but he was definitely there to challenge you. And if you thought you could do better, he was the first one to tell you that, right?
And he was like he's a competitor.
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
like Jim Button, the collaborator and the community builder, but he there's an athlete inside there, an athlete's heart of he also had strong opinions about things where it was he would achieve a level of understanding, and he would be a belief behind that and convince me otherwise if it wasn't. So you can have a lot of, it's actually an effective way to do things, that you can get a lot of traction that way, right? But then you add in the bringing everybody else along, and I think that's what really makes him unique. But I think the thing that I love about Jim that maybe not everybody got to see is he loved to play. So there is definitely a kid's heart in there. And so it wasn't a camping trip that he would go on. It would be an inflatable pub, a theme. Everybody had a themed cam set. You can speak to that. It wasn't a last hurrah party because I've been given a year. It was an epic adventure with helicopters and the live music and costumes and secret passwords and all these amazing memorable things that none of us will ever forget because we had a chance. Somebody just said, you know what, the way I'm going to roll in my life is if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, or I'm going to make it a memory. Right. And I love that about him because those memories are what's left over from those memories is relationship. And he was amazing at that. There was always something, you mentioned it earlier, there's always just something that imagination would take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And he, since his celebration, I can't believe how many people have reached out from, someone in London sending a note, just commenting, hey, if I'm in Calgary, I'm going to look you up so we can have coffee or a drink. And then another one from the Cayman Islands just saying, lovely, that's his legacy, is the people that he brought together, for sure.
I have about 4 or 5 walks booked already. And I think it was you and I heard the story. So we're after Jim's celebration, we're speaking to this individual, and they told us the story of they had a relative across the hall and at hospice. And this relative, and sorry if I butcher the story, but the gist of it is this relative would rave about this nice man named Jim. And they found out afterward that it was actually Jim Button. Wow. And so even in those final days, he was impacting people.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I had this thought a while ago. So because I know that there was a connection. One of the things that Jim loved was like Tragically Hip, Gord Downie. I remember I bought him a record, one of Gord Downie's last records, and dropped it off for him. But when I was watching the documentary, the Gord Downie Tragically Hip, one of the things they talk about is how someone at the end of the documentary uses the analogy of, I think like a hot air balloon or a balloon where, so many artists and business people, they're able to, their balloon goes up, but it just kind of like goes, and it kind of just randomly goes. And Gord Downie was able to land his balloon. You think about the tour that the Tragically Hip were able to do, and he just, he ended on his terms. And so on Monday, when we were at the Celebration of Life for Jim, and you, Jeff, you were up there to share your experiences, and Sarah, you shared your experiences, and then you have that recording of Jim, and just everything that he said was just so perfectly articulated. And then Fraser, you get on your bagpipes and you walk us all out, and just instantly I was thinking, he landed his balloon, is so perfect. So thank you for giving us that opportunity to share that with, it was really good. It's really special, and you guys made that happen for us. So I appreciate that.
We were voluntold by
Yeah.
him. That was one of those voluntelling things.
But yeah, no, it was, I'm saying just, being in the audience and being able to be a part of that. And you guys that was, like I said, it was like, I was like, wow, Jim definitely landed his balloon, and you guys were a big part of that. So, thank you for that.
It's a beautiful analogy. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome.
Mark,
Cheers, guys.
can I ask
Cheers.
You can ask me anything you want, Jeff.
tell us a Jim story.
Okay, I'll tell you.
gotta
Well,
crack
I have a
another
couple of, I'll crack another beer then. Yeah, sit down, right? No. So a couple of my Jim stories would be, no, sorry, you asked for one. So Jim was always a mentor to me, in that I met him right when Village was starting. I was always good friends with Tom, and me and Tom have been friends for over 20 years. And so when they started Village, I got to meet Jim, and when we were done festivals, he would email me and he'd say, "Oh yeah, good job, but maybe did you think of this, and did you think of this?" So always that little bit of unsolicited advice, but because he was in the festival industry, the event industry, I really respected his feedback. And so then he became a mentor for everything that I did, right? He would be the first person that I'd think about when I wanted to do something. And so I'm doing this project. It's called Explore 84, and Terry Andreo is another one of my mentors. I was having coffee with him, and Terry was really challenging me to come up with a concise of why. And so I'm like, okay, I got to think. So I'm up all night writing this, putting my heart on on the paper, and I'm like, hey, this and this. So I emailed Terry in the morning, and but a lot of it included Jim. So I thought, well, it's only right if I add Jim to that. So I CC'd Jim on the email, but Jim was in hospice, so I wasn't expecting that he'd ever see it, but I thought it doesn't feel right to not at least send this to Jim. And so that was like 6:30 in the morning, and about 7 o'clock, Jim emails me back. It's like, well, it needs work. And then he opened up the document and just kind of ripped it apart. And he wasn't wrong, you know what I mean? But I'm like, Jesus,
Thanks
man.
for the memory, Jim.
Yeah, but just like that honesty of, he was always supportive, but not blindly supportive. He was, he was challenging me to be better and to do better. And as a result of that, I rewrote it and rethought about it. And one of the last texts that he sent me was just like 100% agree. And so that was who he was to me. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Can't wait to see it come to life.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Okay. Take care.
To Jimmy.
To Jimmy.
To Jim.
That was good. Appreciate that, guys.
Thank you.